Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lily and today is my rather overdue October book haul. It's nearly the middle of the month. I've just been a bit demotivated to make videos, I guess. It's really dark, but it's actually dark when I get home from work now, and so the week just feels like it goes by very quickly. The weekend has just gone. I actually spent a lot of it writing and I wrote a lot. I should have been cutting, so my novel is actually longer than it was before I started editing with the kind of mind to cut stuff. So yeah, it turns out I'm rubbish at editing. My head's kind of going a bit haywire with all the thoughts, so yay. But anyway, books. So I read 6 books in October, but I did also read 2 graphic novels, so it kind of balanced out a bit. The first book that I read in October was Marcy and the Riddle of the Sphinx by Todd-Stanton, and this is the second book in the Brownstone's Mythical Collection series. I think it's a series, I'm really hoping it's a series, but there's 2 books currently, so it's a progressing series, yay! And this is a really beautiful graphic novel. These are the end papers. If you saw my previous wrap up, the theme of that one was more kind of Icelandic mythology, and so Marcy is the daughter of Arthur, who is the main character in the first book, and we still get to meet what's-his-face, who's looking after the Brownstone family collection and telling all the stories, and this story is all about Marcy, and it's got a very kind of Egypt theme, and there's a lot more character development in this one, and I felt like I connected more with Marcy herself. She's quite intimidated by her father's fame and fortune that he's collected on his adventures as a young man, and now her father's quite old, so he needs a bit of help around the house, and Marcy's quite timid, but she wants to be really brave, so her father tries to teach her how to be brave, and it's a very sweet story. I liked this one much more than I liked the first one. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this series goes. I think the only thing that kind of knocked this down from being 5 stars for me was that I didn't really feel the Egyptness was, it felt a bit more like a gimmick. It wasn't tied in really to the characters, and I didn't really see why it was chosen, other than it was just another mythical place. So I would like to see in future books more relevance to why certain myths and cultures have been chosen. But other than that, this is a fantastic series. It's a really slim little book. I think it's a kind of graphic novel comic crossover for kids, and it's brilliant. Look at the beautiful pictures. This is a really bad way of showing you pictures, but it's wonderful. It's got such a lovely warm colour palette, and I'm just in love with this series. The second book that I read in October was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, as part of my reread of Harry Potter series, and this I think is my favourite book. It's just I love that you get to see more of the classes and things like that. I think I hadn't noticed before, or I hadn't noticed as a child, that in the first 2 books you don't really get to see a lot of the classes. You get a couple sentences about some random thing that happens in them, but you don't get to really be in the class. I really loved about this one is we really get to see more of the classes. I love Lupin. I swear Lupin, Hagrid and Sirius are like my favourite characters. They are perfect, and I'm forever sad that poor Hagrid gets such a bad break on his classes, because he has so much potential to be an amazing teacher, and the kids are just awful. Like, why all the Slytherins are just awful. Why can't there be a nice Slytherin who loves animals? Like, that would be amazing. So this one got an outright 5 stars because it's Harry Potter. The next book that I read in October was quite a difficult book for me. It was The Good People by Hannah Kent. I haven't read Hannah Kent's other book, Burial Rites, but it is up there somewhere. Yeah. And the characters are really well explored and very morally challenging, especially to me. I found I didn't like any of the characters, but I was endlessly fascinated by them and how they thought and their emotions and the way they interacted with each other, and that whole community aspect of time periods gone by really fascinates me anyway. So this being a deeper exploration of life in rural Ireland in 1825, yes. was really, I really enjoyed reading that side of it, but the plot itself I found very difficult to read. It's about a woman whose husband dies at the very beginning of the book, then has to care for her severely disabled grandson on her own. She seeks the help of a local woman called Nancy, and together they kind of get wrapped up in a lot of superstition and their folklore and beliefs about the time, hidden people, the good people, fairies and things like that, and they try to cure this boy, but really what they're doing is it's horrific child abuse, really, and I found that really difficult to read, and the ending didn't really give me any peace over that either. I couldn't enjoy the story, but I could really see that this was a very well written book and the points it was trying to make and how well the research had gone into this. I think I've got a lot of conflicting emotion about it. I am glad I read it. I do think it's a very brilliant book, and I do recommend it, but I think caution to those who maybe do not want to read about child abuse. This has a lot of it. The next book that I read I've already taken back to the library, and that was the Encyclopedia of Earlier. It's a graphic novel short story collection-y kind of thing, and it's got a wonderful folklore-y, fairy tale-y kind of sense about it. The art is incredibly beautiful. I'll stick some pictures of it up here for you. And I really loved the first few stories that I read, but then I found my attention waning a bit and I started reading other things. Actually, I was mostly reading Harry Potter, but it didn't really stick with me for very long. I didn't feel that the stories were particularly original, even though they were very beautifully rendered, and some of the characters were quite intriguing, and some of the changes to the stories that I knew really fascinated me. I just couldn't kind of keep my attention on it, and that was quite a shame for me, really, because I really expected to love it. So I only ended up giving this one 3 stars in the end. The next book was also a book that I found quite difficult to put into words how I felt about it. This might be the reason why this wrap up is so late, because these books are just so many thoughts. But that was The Clocks in This House All Tell Different Times by Zan Brooks. And this book was one of the books I had on my 5-star TBR predictions, I think. And it was very close. I did give this, I think, 4.5 stars in the end. It's an excellent book. It's very well researched. It felt like a classic, even though it was only published this year. It felt like I was reading something much older. So the style was quite distinctive. I loved how the post-war mood was really well evoked. It's incredibly complex and deeply layered. It does so many different things that I think I would have to read it again, and maybe again to really absorb everything that's going on in this book, everything the author is trying to say. It's about a young girl called Lucy who her grandfather kind of signs her up to be an escort for trips to the woods with 4 soldiers who are all named after characters in The Wizard of Oz. And that, you can kind of guess what's really going on there. There's nothing explicit in the books. It's all very kind of just blasé. Nobody particularly cares, even the characters themselves. There's nothing, you don't see anything. It's just, but you know what's going on. And all the way through this book there's so many things like that are layered and textured, and you know what's going on but you don't quite. The characters are brilliant. I really loved Lucy as a character. She's really just like everyone in this book is so realistic but so completely not at the same time. It's bizarre. It's amazing. I don't think I've read anything quite like it. It's a book I would definitely like to reread and analyse one day, because there's just so much going on in it, and there's so much I think I must have missed in my first reading, because like the one kind of issue that I did have with this book, other than a few things to do with representation, which I think largely feel very realistic of the time, the writing was a bit not dense but unclear at times. It was like the author got a bit wrapped up in how amazing he could make every single sentence, that sometimes I wasn't sure what was happening, and there's a specific part right at the end where I really want to know what happened, but I've reread that part several times and I cannot for life of me work out what happened. So that I found quite difficult, and there were lots of places like that where I just thought, okay, I'll just carry on, and there were definitely stuff that was going over my head, and I don't know if that's just me as a reader, but not many people seem to have read this, so I haven't actually been able to discuss it with anyone. So if you have read it and would like to discuss it and maybe answer some questions about things that like I think I missed, that would be really cool, so let me know. But this book was just endlessly fascinating. There's a really, really vile character in here that I just loved to hate. I think this is, it's one you definitely have to read for yourself, I think. I don't think any one person's opinion on this can really sum it up for anybody else. And I think there definitely are issues with it, but again, I think they're quite personal issues that will come up person by person. It's fascinating. I'm very glad I read it. I'm definitely going to be hanging on to it, and I'm definitely going to be rereading it in the future because it's such a moody book. Yeah, that's a really vague description, but I'm done with that one. The last book that I read this month was The Book of Dust. So this is The Book of Dust, the Belle Sauvage. I'm tempted to say sausage just because that was a joke. This book is really heavy, so I'm going to put it down while I talk about it because my arm is aching after like 2 seconds of holding it up. The Belle Sauvage was a prequel to the original trilogy of His Dark Materials. I had expected it to be a kind of mix of a prequel and a sequel because Philip Pullman had done his very best to emphasise that this was not a prequel or a sequel, it was an equal. But really this entire book was a prequel. There was nothing at all set in the future in this book at all. So sorry Pullman, but it's a prequel. Deal with it. Your whole trilogy here might be an equal, but this one is definitely a prequel. And it's about a boy called Malcolm who lives in an inn just outside of Oxford, opposite Priory, where baby Lyra has been sent for sanctuary. I really enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed spending that time with it and just drifting with it. And I felt very apt considering most of it is set on a boat. Malcolm, I really loved him as a character. He felt like he felt kind of like Roger, if Roger had been a protagonist, I think, and that made me warm inside. I really hope that Malcolm and Lyra get to meet when Lyra is older. That would be really cool. I love just exploring Oxford and the emphasis on the river and its changes and the landscape. I think Philip Pullman did a really good job of evoking what that landscape actually is like and what the city is like and how people are so dependent upon it and how their lives are built around it, really. Or on it. A lot of books don't really use their setting, and especially in fantasy I find that quite annoying. So it was really nice to read a book that was so grounded in its setting. I think the things that were weak about this book that didn't really make it as great for me as His Dark Materials, or as a book in general, I think, was that it just didn't really feel like it had any rereadability. I wouldn't reread it like I do with Northern Lights. Like, I read Northern Lights every couple of years. I love it. There's always more to read, and every time I read it I see more. Whereas I think with this one, it's literally just how Lyra got to Oxford. I don't really feel like I learned anything more. I think I just kind of, it's a bit more depth to the story I already knew, I suppose. It was a really nice story to read, but I don't think I'd reread it, and I'm not sure that this would have much appeal for kids either. It's got a very slow start, and it kind of just meanders through, and the villain is very scary, but we don't really get a lot of his kind of motivation and backstory. He's just kind of mad, and there's no real exploration of that. And I was really hoping for more of that, especially considering some of the things he does to his demon. I don't know, I had a lot of thoughts about the Book of Dust. And I wouldn't say these are even negative things really, they're just things I've been thinking about. I wanted to learn new things, and I think going backwards isn't always the best way to do that. I think I'm much more looking forward to the next 2 books, which hopefully will deal more with the future and Lyra as an adult, and hopefully Malcolm as well. I'd like to see Malcolm as an adult, that would be cool. So yeah, that one was a bit of a... I'm really happy that I read it, and I really enjoyed reading it. Pullman's writing is just wonderfully absorbing. So those are my October reads. I hope you're having a good week. Let me know down below what you've been reading, if you've read any of these books. I know especially the good people seems to have been doing its round on YouTube, so it'd be cool to chat with somebody about that. That's all from me today. I hope you're having a good week. Thank you for watching, and hello to some new subscribers. It's great to see you. And a little bit scary, but great to see you. Thank you, and goodbye. And I haven't oh my gosh. Hello. No.